Hello! Today we are talking about fairy tales. I am sure you have heard fairy tales before. There are many fairy tales you are probably familiar with. But do you know what a fairy tale is? A fairy tale is a special kind of folk tale. It is a folk tale that has magic. I like fairy tales. Many fairy tales begin with something with this line, "Once upon a time." Many fairy tales end with this line, "And they lived happily ever after." I like so many different fairy tales, and I wanted to share a few with you today. Fairy tales always have at least some characters and some events. You might think of characters as the people or the animals or the magical things like fairies that can talk and do things in a story. So there are characters. Events are the things that happen in the story. What happens? If you're answering the question, what happens? The answer is an event. Events, there are lots of events in the same story. And today we're just going to find 3 events for each story, kind of like the beginning, the middle, and the end. But there are so many more events. We'll have to skip some events because we can't talk about every event in the story, or else that would just be telling the whole story. Okay, so I have a fairy tale for you. I want to show you the picture that I made. I made one of these. Okay, in this fairy tale, there's a character named Merlin, he's a wizard, and a character named Wart. Do you know what fairy tale this is? Let me tell you the event. See if you can figure out what fairy tale this is. Merlin starts to teach Wart. He's an orphan. Wart pulls the sword from the stone. Hint, hint. And Wart is now king. He is King Arthur. Do you know what fairy tale this is? This fairy tale is called The Sword in the Stone. It is this fairy tale of King Arthur, and it is made into this movie. It's a Disney movie. I have a couple Disney movies to show you today. I like this fairy tale. It is very fun. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, this fairy tale has these characters. I can't tell you the name of the characters because it gives it away. But there's a queen and a princess and a prince, and there are 7 little men. Let me tell you a few of the events. The queen tries to kill the princess, so she runs away. The 7 men take care of her, but the queen poisons the princess anyway. And then the prince saves the princess. Do you know what fairy tale this is? You probably do. It's Snow White. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. This is a fairy tale. Okay. This one, I can't tell you the names of this one either, or else it's too obvious. The characters in this fairy tale, there's a princess who has very long hair. There's like a witch kind of person. And then there's a prince. In the original fairy tale, it's a prince. In the Disney one that you watch, he's not a prince. So sometimes Disney changes things to make the story different. Okay. Some events in the story, the witch locks up the princess. The prince finds her and climbs her hair, and they live happily ever after. I made a spelling error. I wrote the live happily ever after instead of they. There, now I fixed it. They live happily ever after. Do you know what story this is? It's the story of Rapunzel. Disney made the movie Tangled, which is another story of Rapunzel. They changed the story. They changed the Snow White story. The one you watch in the movie is not like the one that you would read from the people who wrote it down a long time ago. Same with Sword in the Stone. Disney movies, they change the fairy tales because sometimes it's fun to make changes, and it's okay to make changes. But it's also fun to know some of the original stories. So you can always go back and find out what those fairy tales were originally about. You can ask your learning coaches to help you find them if you have maybe a favorite fairy tale that you've watched in a Disney movie. Maybe you can find out a different version and learn a different story. There's a very famous fairy tale called Cinderella. You probably know this one, and there are hundreds of versions of Cinderella. Some that were written written recently that are really fun, some that were written long time ago from people all over the world. So search out some different versions of fairy tales. Today I'm going to share with you a fairy tale. This fairy tale is called The Little Snow Maiden. I am going to guess that you have not heard this fairy tale before. It is one that isn't as popular here in America, but it is a popular fairy tale from Russia. I think you're going to like it. I have a few pictures for you. It's called The Little Snow Maiden. This one's retold by Sue Cassier. Once upon a time, see, there it is. Far away, there lived an old man and an old woman named Peter and Anna. They were good people and happy, but for one thing, they never had any children of their own, and they longed for children of their own. One day, they were listening to the other kids in the neighborhood playing outside. The sound of those children playing just made them sad. They watched the children build a snowman, and they said to each other, "What if we built our own little snow child? Let's build a snow maiden." "Why not?" said Anna with a shrug. "We have nothing to do." So they put together the snow, packed it up, and built a beautiful snow maiden. "Oh, just look at her," cried Peter with delight. "If only she would now speak to us or give us some sign of life." "Yes, run and play as the other children do," pleaded Anna, as she looked straight into the eyes of the snow maiden, and wished ever so strongly that the icy form before her would give some sign that it was more than a block of snow. And suddenly, as if by magic, the eyelids of the snow creature began to quiver ever so slightly. Her lips began to curl slowly upward that could only be called a smile. It was a snow maiden. She was alive. Peter and Anna wrapped her up and brought her inside. The snow maiden said, "Please, please, it is too warm in here. Let me go out and play." They got her a coat and boots and a little hat. The snow maiden went outside and played in the yard all night. Out in the moonlight, Peter and Anna stood by the window late into the night watching her play. She played all night and all day. She played with the other children, and her laughter rang like bells. When she came in to eat, she only ate a block of ice. She said, "This is my porridge." After many weeks and weeks of fun with their snow maiden, the weather began to warm. The first signs of spring began to show themselves. The snow started to melt. One day, the snow maiden said to Peter and Anna, "The time has come when I must go to join my friends, Frost and Snow. Goodbye, my dears, goodbye. Back I go across the sky." Then the snow maiden began to melt, and she was gone. Oh, how Peter and Anna were so sad. They cried and wept. They were sure now they would never again see their snow maiden. But one starlit night, when winter had come again, Peter and Anna were awakened by a familiar silvery peal of laughter. Could it be? It seemed too good to be true. "Doesn't that sound like our little snow maiden?" Peter asked breathlessly as he ran to open the door. And sure enough, there she was. The snow maiden danced into the room, and as she danced, she sang, "By winter night and winter day, your love calls me here to stay. Here till spring I'll stay, and then I'm back to frost and snow again." The snow maiden stayed again all winter. In the spring, she had to melt and go, but she came back every winter, and the family lived happily ever after. What did you think of that story? Isn't that a great story? Well, this is a fun fairy tale that has some magic that made the snow maiden come to life. Who are the characters in our story? Let's fill out our fairy tale. A fairy tale has characters. There was Peter, the Snow Maiden, and Anna. So we'll put them up on our board. There are some events in the story. What types of things happened? At the beginning of the story, Peter and Anna, they build a snow maiden. That was one of the first events. One of the next events is that by magic, she comes alive, and she plays with them all winter long. There's another event. Here's my last event. It says, she leaves in the spring, but she comes back every winter. Those are the events of the Snow Maiden. Fairy tales have characters and events. This week, you will see some graphic organizers that look kind of like the graphic organizers I showed you here, with a spot to draw characters and a spot to either write or draw events. You can fill these out with your learning coach for any fairy tales you might read, either on Savvis or by yourself. Or you could just talk about the fairy tale characters and the fairy tale events. You don't have to fill this out. That's up to you and your learning coach. I hope you have a good day. Bye, everybody.